Valery didn't really like his grandmother. She was always shouting. Her apartment on Vasilyevsky Island with 5 rooms and a narrow corridor resembled a maze. Valery sometimes had to live with her for several days. So now he was sent there. The first thing she did was taking the phone away, then shoving it into her room. "Sit and play with blocks. If you behave yourself, we'll watch TV, okay?" Valery looked at the floor. First grade is behind the shoulders. What blocks? "Why are you making faces, you fool? Bored? Well, excuse me," the old woman. "I forgot something." Cold fingers gripped the boy's wrist, and she led him into the back room. My grandma stopped by the pale yellow sofa. "Stick your hand in." Grandma pointed to the gap between the armset and the seat. The grandson obeyed meekly. The thin hand sank almost to the elbow in the sofa. A moment later, someone shook Valery's hand. The way his uncle or his father's friends shook the boy's hand. The boy recoiled in fear. "Don't be afraid, you poor coward. This is Zdorovavich, your new friend. This is for you, so you don't mess around. I'll give you the soldiers and Dad's cars and an excavator. Sit here and play." Valery has wanted Dad's cars for a long time, especially plastic ones, colored soldiers. When Valery got tired of playing, he studied strange objects in the room, and sometimes he put a hand to Zdorovavich and he shook it. Once the boy squeezed his hands 3 times in the sofa. He was instantly answered in kind. "Zdorovavich, can you hear me? If you can, shake the hand 3 times as now." My mysterious tenant responded. Valery would have talked more, but he didn't have enough perseverance, and after a couple of questions, he ran to the toys. Valery spent 4 days almost cheerfully. Before leaving, the old lady told me to say goodbye to Zdorovavich, but this time, the hand in the sofa didn't let him go. Valery twitched several times. "Renounce your mother," Grandma said sternly. Valery shook his head and shouted. Zdorovavich stung much more than a wasp. "Renounce mother, or I will give you to Zdorovavich. You're not the first." "I renounce." Valery would never disown his mother, but she was far away now, and no lousy hands from the sofas could reach her. He pulled his hand free. 6 red dots remained on his wrist. My mother was often under the weather, but then she went to the hospital. For 6 months, the boy managed to forget about Zdorovavich. But one evening, renunciation popped up in his mind. A couple of days later, my grandparents took Valery to visit my mother, and he told her about the strange lodger, Lyudmila Vasilyevna. "Hair, you will soon be 8. It's just a dream. My grandmother said that you would die if I broke my vow to communicate with you." "Don't worry, I'm just a bit sick," said the mother, who was weak from chemotherapy, and stroked his son's hair. A month later, the disease was able to deceive the doctors and kill my mother. Valery stayed with his father. Dad took to drinking beer, visiting friends, and borrowing money. When Valery was 15 years old, his grandmother was buried in the Kovalevsky cemetery. A few days after the funeral, Valery went to Grandma's apartment. He stole the key from his father by entering the apartment without locking the door and leaving the key in the lock. The teenager waved the flashlight, but after a few seconds turned on the light. Because of his adolescent restlessness, he first wanted to explore the apartment. He popped into the kitchen, looked into the bathroom, went to his grandmother's room. Suddenly, there was a click. Someone turned the key in the lock. Valery darted into the corridor. No one. There was no key. He pulled the handle, closed. In the silence of the apartment, someone snapped their fingers. Another click from Grandma's room. Valery took a crowbar from his backpack and slightly opened the door. No one. Only out of the corner of his eye, he did see movement. A hand was poking out from behind the coffee table, moving. Valery quickly slammed the door. Then there was a click, followed by a creak at the end of the corridor. A door stood ajar in place of the wall, and a hand. The teenager ran into the bathroom and slammed the door shut. An afterthought crossed his mind. Now Zdorovavich accurately determined his location. Valery had no doubt of the creature's good hearing. There was a soft sound, kind of a click or a tap. Valery didn't turn on the light, but the bathroom was lit up like this. The remains of the evening twilight came out of the half-open wooden window that opened into the bathroom. And through the fear, a second thought came. Try to leave the house through the bathroom window. There was a knock. The teenager screamed. The knocking stopped. Fingernails scraped against the door. After ripping his sweatshirt on a nail, the teenager jumped on a wooden table. From it, on the windowsill, opened a plastic window, squeezed out a mosquito net, and dived into the autumn gloom. Getting up, Valery shone a flashlight on the window. 3 hands were holding onto the frame, and another hand reached out and beckoned with a long forefinger. Some time passed, and once at home, my father brought a letter and handed it to me with the words, "Here, you didn't love your grandmother, but she doted on you." Even left a letter. Valery opened the white envelope. It contained a yellowed leaf. "Valery, I'm not your enemy. You're afraid of me and you're angry about what happened when you were a child. But it was necessary. Don't forget me and remember, I'll be useful again." The guy didn't read his grandmother's letters, and he didn't know her handwriting, but he immediately realized that the letter was not from her. The years went by. The existence of Zdorovavich plagued Valery. By the age of 20, Valery was still the same Valery. One summer day at noon, Valery returned to his grandmother's apartment. The young man went to the wall. He tapped softly. The same booming sound. Valery leaned to the wall and whispered, "Zdorovavich." There was a click, and a door appeared in the wall. A moment, and Valery got inside. Nothing changed here. Over the couch, the 4 hands were swaying. One hand was with long nails and smooth white skin. Another was wrinkled. A third was big and hairy, with tentacles and stingers at the end. A fourth one had ears growing out of it. Each arm had several joints and bent in different directions. The hand with the large palm, Valery had greeted it as a child stretched out 5 elbows to the guest. The tentacles curled like bracelets. The young man shook it and sat down on the sofa. "Zdorovavich, I'm sorry." 3 handshakes. "Was it my grandma who created you?" Dead silence. "Did you kill my mom?" A large hand reached out from the sofa in 3 segments, leaned against the wall, then gripped the wardrobe. For a few seconds, the palm danced around the shelf, feeling for objects until it snatched up the notebook and pen. Then the hand retracted and began to write. "I didn't want anyone to die, but I'm powerless against the mistress laws." "Is this my grandma?" A withered hand took the notebook, and a huge hand grasped the young man's wrist and squeezed it 3 times. "You served her?" The answer was yes. "You're still in the service, aren't you?" The hand wrote, "I follow her laws, but now you have a little power too."